going to call our regular Board of Education meeting to order. And this evening, we are lucky enough to have Mrs. Walters and her fourth grade class who are going to do the pledge. So if they would come in, please.
Good turn.
And they follow instructions perfectly. Beautiful job, guys. Okay, like I said, this evening we are lucky enough to have Mrs. Walters' class here to do the pledge. It is her fourth grade class, and I'm going to take a moment to introduce each one of the students that is here this evening. But first I'm going to start with their wonderful teacher, Mrs. Autumn Walters. She is here to do the pledge as well. And we have Noah Ashburn Kudla, Peyton Campbell, Alexis Denny, Nathan Gignac, Jacob Gonzalez, Alexandra Grant, Cora Hall, Ava Jackson, Annabelle Loftus, Layla Lyons, Austin Morelli, Brady Morelli, Logan Northam, Evan Planka, Lauren Telto, Lainey Wagner, and Lily Yelenich. So welcome to our Board of Education meeting. And at this time, if we could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you guys would like to turn, yep. Okay, when you're ready, we're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice job.
Thank you. I thought there'd be more bows than that, guys. Nobody's into it? Okay. Thank you very much. You did a great job. Thank you for coming to our meeting. Good job, guys. Nice job, Lauren. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Oh, that's just the best way to start off a meeting, isn't it? Okay, next. Bridget Smith is not here this evening, so Dan has volunteered to read our mission statement and do the roll call.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in a global community. Sarah? Here. Chris? Here. Tracy?
Here.
Jeff? Here. Bridget is absent with notice. I'm here. Margaret?
I'm here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, excuse me, I would be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Is that Jeff?
Yep.
It has been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is our consent agenda items. A motion would be in order to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Was that Chris and then Sarah? Okay. There's only one of these left. There's only one that's not stapled left. That's okay. That's okay if they just look at it. Okay. There should be two sets of meetings, right? Is that what I'm?
From 10:26 and 10:12. They've been stapled together.
Oh, so this is just an extra, okay, all right, so we're good. Okay. All right, it has been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Or Brian, anything that you would like to?
We do not have any in the personnel report. You'll see several coaches as we begin our winter season, some that have switched over. There's several of the updated coaches both current employees, paraprofessionals, as well as PCMI employees.
Okay. So it has been moved and supported. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is our True Blue moment. This is the portion of our meeting where we acknowledge, and if you guys return those closed session, we acknowledge and honor those things that are happening within our school district that are extraordinary, exceptional, whether it's people from the community or within our own school district. And we have two this evening. Mr. Walmsley?
Good evening. Our first True Blue moment is for the Kroger store in Richmond here. Stanley Bonsky, the assistant store manager, is here tonight. As you know, our Kroger store, I don't know if it's not. I'll speak louder. Our Kroger store recently went under a remodel and it reopened, and Richmond Community Schools has partnered with Kroger for many events in the past and hopefully for the future. And I happened to be there on the day that they reopened the store. And Kroger generously donated $5,000, and those funds will go towards our arts and music program at the high school level to support their initiative. So I want to thank Kroger for that generous donation with their certificate here. And it reads, Richmond Community Schools recognizes the Kroger Corporation and Richmond Store 706 on the 9th day of November 2015 with this certificate of appreciation for their generous monetary donation to the Richmond Community Schools visual and performing arts programs in the district. So thank you very much.
Just on behalf of Kroger, we're a big part of the community. We'd like to stay a part of the community. We're proud to help out all of the Kroger Richmond schools.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is a tremendous donation. Thank you.
The second True Blue moment is I'd like to introduce Deb Dobbs and Larry Flaga, who are our mechanic and our transportation director. This department, there's one that's not here tonight, Craig Delore is not here. But this team here, along with all the bus drivers, really takes pride in their work every single day and to ensure the safety for our students getting on and off the bus and all the bus inspection. And Richmond Community Schools is one of a few districts that has recently received a 100% passing rate for school bus inspections. And we owe it all to this team here. They are very diligent in making sure our buses are safe for students getting on and off the bus, both the wear and tear, et cetera. So I want to personally honor and thank them for, because they start and end our students' day, and they do a remarkable job. So I have a certificate for each one of them, and if you can give Craig his certificate. The certificate reads, Deb Dobbs is hereby recognized on this 9th day of November 2015 with the Certificate of Appreciation from Richmond Community Schools for outstanding dedication to ensure the safe transport of students each and every day, and for the Transportation Department receiving a 100% pass rate for school bus safety inspections from the Michigan State Police. So we have actually two certificates, one that from the state police that will be displayed, as well as their individuals. So I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Larry? And then this is Craig.
And
Thank you.
wait, stay right there. I think it's important to note, this doesn't happen all the time, where you get 100% of this. And Larry, it truly is a tribute to you. It is year in and year out that our buses are top-notch and they are safe for our kids to ride on back and forth every day. And we are extremely lucky to have you with us. And those of you that may not know, but Larry does a whole lot more than just be our bus mechanic. He is a fountain of information and work on so many things in the district, so we thank you. And even though Deb would like to be standing there pretending like she doesn't have a lot of part of it, it does take a team to be able to know that the group, the unit that the three of you have works so well together and makes that department run. So thank you so much, and we are very lucky to be able to say that once again, we are 100%, and thank you. Next, items of interest from members of the board. Does anyone have anything?
I was able to go to the fun run at Lee last week, I think it was, and I thought that was such a good fundraiser that they did. The PTO did an amazing job setting that up, and I really liked that fundraiser was healthy for the kids. They were running, they were moving, and I thought it was just something different that we did, and I really just wanted to say it was a good time.
Very good. Anyone else?
I think we should get an update as far as the technology is going. I'm hearing, talking to different parents and different kids that some classrooms are using it, some classrooms aren't. I don't know if that's because the teaching staff isn't getting the proper help that they need to learn how to do it. I know some teachers are learning it on their own or already know how to use it, but there are teachers that, it's new to them. It's a big change. So, I'm concerned that it's just going to be pushed to the side and not used. Because those of you that were here when we did it, go door to door for the bond, there was a big concern of a lot of people in the community that they were just going to be used as toys and kids would play games on them. And unfortunately, that's what I'm hearing is going on in some classrooms. And I don't know if it's because the teachers aren't getting the help that they need, or it's, their choice to do it that way or what, but that is not what they were intended for when we included that in the bond. So I don't know if that's something we put on the agenda at a future meeting.
More than happy. As you know, I try to get around as much as possible, and I've had an opportunity to see firsthand a variety of teachers using exactly the way it was intended to. And I know we have staff that their comfort level may not be there yet, but we're going to work with them. I'll give an example. I was over in the science rooms, and they were doing a lesson with a chemistry teacher from the University of Michigan, where he was posing questions, and the students were using their laptops to engage. Mrs. Hall's class, I was in the elementary school, they have all the laptops open, and the kids were working on, I think it was a math assignment that day, where they were actually sharing their answers and how they solved the problem up on the screen. So there's a variety. Just today in Mrs. Megan Gambridge's class, I happened to be in there for another reason, they were doing a reading monologue where they were blogging, if you will, and students were responding to each other's blogs about the topic of a character trait that they were looking at in the story. So I agree, there are some staff that we're gonna support and get them there, and there are staff that are just going with it and blossoming with it. So I'll be more than happy to share some examples.
Just as much as I hear that the ones that aren't using it, I'm hearing the same, if not more, are taking full advantage of it. I just don't want it to be. I'll use an example. When I was in school, I don't want the staff to use it as, a TV projector with the VCR to wheel into the room when I was in school and put a movie in and use that. I don't want it to be a crutch. These are supposed to be the main tool, instrument in learning.
Absolutely.
And I think really the key is that when we implemented the bond, there was conversation of training and things that need to be done for the staff, because this is a new thing. So I think that maybe the key here is an update for us on what the training has been, where is it at, that sort of thing, to make sure that we are using everything appropriately if it's not. Because there isn't anyone here in the district teaching or otherwise that doesn't want to use that to its full advantage. So let's just make sure that we've got everybody equipped.
Well, and a reminder that it is new.
And it's new.
I mean, it's a new thing, and so that does, though we would want that to happen as quickly as it possibly could to be in and fully, engaging with all students, it does take a while for some people to do that. So, I know it's November, but at the same time, that's still new, with this much technology coming in and making changes in classrooms. So, I think that's important to have in mind as well.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm just saying, I don't want, a third grader to have a teacher that's full-on, knows everything about it, like the back of his or her hand, and then that student go on to fourth grade
Right.
to a classroom that doesn't use it.
Understood.
And I don't want, it's new to be used as an excuse over and over again.
No, I
I just want to
know.
make sure that everybody's getting the help that they need, because
Right, understood.
when my daughter brought hers home, it was my first time with playing with Windows, and I don't know how many years, because I just use Apple.
Uh-oh.
And it took me a good 20 minutes, half an hour to remember how everything worked. I'm trying to just one-touch things, and it's not opening up, and
Right.
all that, so.
Oh, definitely.
Anyone else have anything? Okay, we'll move on to our first item, presentations, school property options. Mr. Walmsley?
Several weeks ago, I brought to you to look at some of the property we have in the district that is currently not being used on an everyday basis. It may be used for storage. And I had been working with Ms. Carol Walters, who's actually here with us to answer some of the questions in some of her report that she gave you. In your board packet, you'll see a letter that she crafted for the district regarding some of our options. So that's what I'd like to talk to you about tonight, about the options of this property. I'm going to, just to get perspective here, this is 32 Mile Road. This is Main Street, M19. This is over here on this side is that house that is not being utilized right now,
Needs to be knocked down.
or needs to be knocked down. So what I'm looking at is the district has two properties. The Odd, which is right here, and then as I've often referred to as the old bus garage, which is this little building here is a maintenance building. It's got one office, a bathroom, and kind of like a meeting area out there. Next to it is a warehouse that has actually 3 bus garage doors. The buses used to pull in part of the way, and they would be maintenance serviced out of there. That currently is just, it's housing a lot of unused equipment or some of our field striping equipment when we do for striping the fields. And then this area that was attached to the bus garage is where we currently have our salt for the winter, and that's where it's usually housed for the winter. So as I began the process of looking at what are our options, these two properties share a common driveway that goes out to 32. So that limits some of our options because there is no access for the Odd to enter this back parking lot. So in your packet, you have from Carol Walters kind of some options here. And Carol, would you mind just talking about this? I have a copy, or I'm sure you brought it here. I don't know if you want to go up to the microphone so it can.
That's a good idea. There you go. The letter that I sent to the school board explains the different things that could be done. If you lease it, if you lease the property, that would be one completely different decision other than selling it. My concern, after meeting with the city, is the biggest and most important quality to them is that whatever we do, if you sell something, it has to have road frontage. You cannot sell a landlocked piece. And you could ask for a variance, probably would not get very far with that. So you have to keep in mind, if your ultimate goal is to sell those buildings, then the driveway is going to have to get attached, more than likely, to the buildings and be sold with them. So that the frontage on 32 Mile Road would become the frontage for the two buildings that are in question. So if you do that, then you'd need to give an easement to the odd to drive on that driveway to get to their building. Because you don't have any access to the parking area if you sell the driveway. It can be done. And it was Troy at the city that I met with that said the most logical way to sell would be to sell the driveway along with the buildings. That's an option. If you lease, none of that is important at this point, because the property could be leased according to whatever the school's rules are. Of course, you would want all kinds of insurances on the building, whatever would be required for the school, and he would have to insure things also. So I don't know for sure where you are or where you want to be with this. If you have questions of me, then maybe I can kind of help.
In the letter that Carol presented, you'll see various options of estimates of cost per square footage regarding leasing, selling, and so forth, for us to consider. I bring this to the board because if we want to pursue this to see if there's a buyer or a leaser out there, we'd have to begin, first of all, finding someone, and then, and there has been interest in that property from a perspective of just they don't necessarily need store frontage for the property. So if there's been interest, if the board wants me to go forward and contact and go through the process, I'd be more than happy to do that.
So if we were looking to sell the 005, on the parcel where it says 005, that's the odd and the two buildings. But if we were looking to just sell the two bus garage buildings at this point, let's say sell, and not do anything with the odd.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that, correct?
You could do that, but you would probably have to attach the driveway.
Right, so that was gonna be my question. So if you're attaching the driveway to it, you're attaching the driveway, but if you still own the odd,
Then you have
what
to,
does that do? 'Cause I don't understand that.
well, you'd have to give an easement across the driveway for the parking to the odd.
Okay.
So the school would lose ownership of the driveway, but then they would gain an easement going across to the odd building. I call it the odd building, I'm sorry, I'm still pretty old school, guys.
I do too, because that is what it is.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, the thing that would have to be done with that is a new parcel is being created. That would require legal descriptions, require surveys and approvals, like I put in the letter here. You know, all of that would have to be approved. The only thing that I can say is, in my meeting with Troy and the assessor, they seemed pretty receptive to the idea if you wanted to sell and attach the driveway for a sale to get rid of those buildings and have the school be rid of them. They seemed quite positive about that, but, you know, they also said there's no guarantees.
Right.
So if you have somebody that would be interested in improving those buildings and purchasing them, you'd certainly, I would think, want him to go and do his due diligence and get the proper surveys and legal descriptions and meetings with the city. Then he would have to go back, if they okayed that, he'd have to go back when he has his usage plan in place and have all the proper inspections to gain his occupancy permit. Because he'd have to have plumbing and mechanicals and, you know, placement of machinery and all that kind of thing. So would he be willing to lease and do all those building improvements if he had no ability for future purpose. Purchase. I don't know that. Yeah, well, if he would, if all he cared about is running his business. Some people don't want ownership. So, in that event, what I explained in the offer, the way the condition of the buildings right now would be more like a storage facility cost, like, you know, a couple dollars a square foot or so, because of the condition they're in. I can't feasibly believe that somebody that's trying to run a business would be willing to spend more than that, if that, while he's getting a building ready to use and can't create any income out of it. So, but it is a possibility. That's the big thing. That you do have a possibility if you want to get rid of the buildings. It's not an absolute no, and it could be done. There's just steps that would definitely have to be taken.
How does an easement work? You talked about the easement of the driveway, I'm not familiar with that. If they would have, to keep and maintain that easement, but could they at some point say, we don't want you to have rights on this easement?
If there's an easement put on the driveway for the odd, it would be a permanent easement. Yeah, and that's all done by attorneys, and recorded at the title company and that kind of thing.
Carol, but to me, it's a question to the board. I don't know that I would be interested in leasing the building, because why would we want to continue and be a landlord, if you will? If there is someone that's interested in purchasing the building, why wouldn't we want to sell it?
If we
Well,
thought we
I-
would use it.
Let
in
me
the
make sure
future.
that I'm clear. The conversation I had isn't necessarily a purchase now. They're interested in a possibility if whether it's a lease to start, then to evolve to a purchase and so forth. So I don't have someone saying, I want to buy it now. 'Cause
I'm not,
oh, okay.
no, I wasn't saying that. I'm just trying to make the conversation of what are we looking at? Because we store salt.
The
in there.
salt
That's all
is
we
in
do in
here,
that building.
and then what's left in the building is the remaining paint for the fields, which could be moved inside for the winter months. The mechanical in this building definitely needs to be upgraded and work on it.
But I'm
Other
saying
than
we
that,
don't
in the
use it for
building,
anything.
It's storage for some excess furniture that is really unusable in today's classrooms.
I toured that when I was first on the board. Weren't there plow fronts in there?
There's in the maintenance in the bus garage over here on this corner,
It's
there's
over
some
there.
plow equipment, which
Okay.
is in a fenced-in area. If we were to sell this or lease it to someone, there would be an expense that we'd have to relocate the salt.
Mm-hmm.
And my recommendation would be relocate it into the bus garage area that's fenced in. Whether it's
And you'd have to put up some type of a structure to cover it.
yeah, that would be the,
Use concrete barrier, surround,
Yeah,
then canvas canopy.
Okay.
like you see, like toilets or something.
Right.
You know, yeah, be like that.
yeah, I'm not looking for like a building or anything, I'm just more
No,
about,
but
yeah.
I mean.
But you'd have to put something to
You'd still have
protect
some
the.
cost involved in that, right.
Yes. Other than that, in there, there's not most of the stuff that's in this smaller building, we have been moving over into the supervisor's area in the high school. The usable stuff, there's,
What's the cost of that building to the district at this point?
we pay the insurance on the building and the insurance on the odd through our set seg. And I want to say the odd was about 1,300 a year, but it's probably about 800 for the two set seg, but I'll have to verify that for you. So our cost right now for us is the insurance of the building, but the heating, cooling when it was being used, that system's been shut down, or will be shut down, I should say, and then the electrical for the building. Current cost right now.
And if you don't do anything with the building, would there be a requirement for you to keep it upgraded to a certain level of any kind? Or could it sit there and, I hate to say it, but deteriorate?
The longer it sits, the more of a liability it becomes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The two buildings actually aren't attached. There's a little
Right.
walkway between them. And, I mean, it's got to be cleaned up around it if we're going to leave it set, to at least protect what investment we have there.
I think the leasing end of it just seems to me just like a nightmare, because there are so many upgrades that need to be done to it. Even if you were just to use it for cold storage, I would think you'd have to have the electrical, the plumbing, I mean, all that stuff has to be repaired. And so if you can sell it, I would just sell it and let whoever buys it, make that their problem, not ours. Because if we have to fix it, then, that's an expense on us, and then, so we go ahead and fix everything. We get a tenant that leases it for a year, 2 years, and then they decide they don't want it. And then we can't, for whatever reason, we can't find another tenant.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, it starts deteriorating again and not getting used and whatever.
Yeah, I don't.
Doesn't cost us anything a year, though, to have that extra space.
Well, if you had a tenant that proposed to do the upgrades himself with your approvals, I don't know how the board works with that, but, that is always a possibility.
There's lots of ways you get creative.
Mm-hmm. Just so you know.
30,000 in upgrades, and so your lease agreements are $1 a month for X amount of months until, you make up that amount. Like, they do all kinds of crazy stuff, but.
So that's what I'm looking for from the board, and whether it's tonight or at a future time, is just information on this, or do we want to pursue leasing it, putting it up for sale to see what offers are out there?
Well, there is someone that you have talked to.
Correct.
And so I guess, in my mind, if there's someone that has approached you, wouldn't you talk to them to say, here are the two, this is what our real estate person says, here's the two options, and see what that person is interested in? And then I guess figure from there. I mean, if someone would want to buy that and do something with it, have at it. I mean.
To speak to that too, do something with that. I don't want to just sell it to just anybody, because.
I'm not saying that,
Well,
right?
and I'm just, the history of that corner, there's been buildings that have sat there with nothing done to them and are eyesores for a lot of years. And I don't want somebody with a lot of money just to come in and buy it and just let it sit, because whether we fix it or somebody else, it's still our kids that are walking through that little alleyway.
Right.
Whether it's our liability or somebody else's, it's still.
Because we do have students that walk from Lee, because this is our line here, and they do travel that way.
But you can't discriminate. If it goes up for sale, anyone can buy it.
But you don't have to
don't-
accept the offer.
You don't have to sell it to
I
them.
mean,
You sure can.
You can, absolutely. You can not sell it to them.
You could look at what the price that you're getting, and if it's not what you're expecting, then you have to rescind it. You don't have to sell at that point based on the price that would be.
Right, but it can't be based on who's buying it.
Right, it can't be on the who, but.
Yeah,
Right.
but I'm just saying you cannot sell it, but you're right, you can't do that. But I'm just thinking that if you've already talked with someone and we've got this information, I think before I can really decide anything or tell you a direction to go, you need to talk to that individual and then see where it goes from there, because then that becomes a viable thing for us to consider and to really talk about that.
There's too many what-ifs.
Yeah, I mean, this basically, what we have from Carol is great, because it lays everything out. If this happens, or if you want to do this, this is how it can all shake out. Well, now I want to know what does that mean from the person that you've talked to that is interested in it? Because that's kind of where this has sparked from.
Correct.
Correct?
Well, yes, and as we've been moving the stuff out of there, knowing that building, from our angle, needs upgrades. It doesn't have any internet over to that building, or it'd have to be some major investment on our end if we were going to use that building. And I don't see at this point us needing that building with the current bus garage, the
Right.
kind of consolidation of
classrooms that we've been doing. And there's not a whole lot of usable stuff there for us as a district.
Do we know what the business is that they're interested in having there?
I think we wouldn't want to say anything
not-
until you know for sure.
I just was curious.
Well, I guess once it's out there that we're looking at this, you know, you hear rumors all the time, but there are rumors, there are other people who are interested in that for a variety of purposes. And I want to make sure if the decision is to progress down that road or that path, I'm sure there are going to be other people that are going to be interested. And what I was asking Carol is, what is our, I don't even know what we would even charge.
Where do we stand,
Where do
right.
we stand? What's a starting point for us?
Right.
And based on her research, this is what she's come up with. And Carol's done it, for those who are new on board, she's done work with the district previously.
Yes, I have.
Yes. Okay. So does everyone think that's a direction to go?
God.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm not interested in having whatever happens cost us money, because we don't have money to put into it. So I guess hearing a proposal from whoever it is you've spoken to makes the most sense. And then after that, I mean, I would be interested, I guess, since there is viable activity happening at the Odd, after we know what this, business or person is interested in. I mean, are we obligated to have a conversation then with what's happening at the Odd to say, how would this impact what you're doing? If that, if an easement conversation and all that kind of stuff. I guess I didn't know that's in the future, but just to make sure that that's something to consider, since there's activity happening and things are happening in that space too.
And if we're going to put it up for sale to the highest bidder, then it's not really a lease situation. It's not, I mean, you could say, well, they have to make upgrades. I think that we need to know, are we going to lease or are we going to sell? And make a
Right, that's-
decision.
Right, that's why I said in the beginning, myself, I wouldn't be
Because just
interested in
because this
leasing it.
person said that they would be interested in possibly upgrading the building, let's say they went that route, it doesn't mean that the next person
Correct.
would want to, and we've already put that out there.
Yeah, I think we're leaning more towards the sale end of it.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel, and I think Margaret is the same way.
But I think that Brian just wanted to give us, the whole picture, if you will.
And there's policy that dictate, if we're going to go down the sale,
Correct.
it's got to be out there for anybody and everybody to look at and
Correct.
bid. If we're leasing, we're still the landlord, if you will. We can create an agreement with the person in that, so, with whoever's using the facility.
I mean, I guess both ends are open for Brian to look into. I mean, he could talk to whoever, and they could come back with some fantastic lease thing for us that, ultimately looks better than the sell. So
Could.
And I agree, leasing does sound like it could be a nightmare. But I wish we could, if we were gonna sell, my only fear is like Dan said, who's gonna be in there? They're right next to our kids. I wish we had a little say in who bought it, and I don't know our limitations.
Sandwiched right between the two.
I know, and our kids walk there. I wish we had a little control over who bought it, and if we don't, it makes me a little nervous. But I think leasing sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, that's kind of where, leasing, if you're going to look at it from
You have
that
some
point, leasing
control.
sounds good because you can control. So
Yeah,
I don't know
right.
if Brian and whoever gets their heads together and come up with some fantastic lease agreement, well, then maybe that's the
Right.
better way, because then you can control who's in there.
Yeah,
Well, and the
But ultimately, we're telling Brian to look into it more.
yeah.
Right. And the reality is, we could sell it today to this, and
They could
3
sell
or
it
4
to
years
more
down the road, they
yeah.
sell to some, and there's nothing we can do about that,
Yeah.
that's the other thing too, but, but I think if you just look into both of it with the individual that you've talked to, and and then we can just go from there.
May I? The one question that I had for the school, because naturally I don't know, is the importance of the driveway. Is that driveway used to come back onto the school property on the other side at all? Away from the yard and away from the two buildings? On this side of that driveway? The house that's there, but behind that, is that anything that you need to use that driveway for the schools?
Our buses primarily use off of the 32-mile.
And the gate that goes to that parking lot.
Okay.
This gate that's here, or access point, was really just for the maintenance staff that was staffed there.
Okay.
It's, most of the time, it's locked.
Okay.
They go out the other way.
They go out the one towards either 32, or they'll cut through the school parking lot to go to the bus loop on the side of the building, of the high school.
So it's not like if you
Yeah.
gave up the driveway, you'd all of a sudden go, oh my gosh.
We don't have that yet.
No,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
That road is pretty beat up.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Carol, very much. Okay, next we have first reading of some board policies.
In
Brian?
the fall, Neola gives us policies, and the last set of policies I received, I split between two. So we had one set that we approved in is it October-ish?
Yes.
These are part of that same fall package. So some of the themes as I'm going through these are similar. There's a policy 6111, which is called the internal controls. And it's to make sure that we have reasonable controls in place and assurances when we're dealing with federal grants. And this is primarily what we have when we had the auditors come in and look at how we're operating. But there was not an internal control policy. So Neola is recommending we adopt this policy regarding how we monitor, evaluate, and ultimately audit those funds, et cetera. The post-issuance compliance tax exemption, as you look through the bolded part, you'll see most of it is there's some language cleanup, and it talks about the related administrative guidelines, and I'll be working with the business department. But it basically makes sure that we're in compliance with the Treasury regulations and so forth regarding the issuance of tax certification or certificates. And when you do that, we use our school attorneys for this process, but there's pieces that we're not in our current policy. And that there is on the fourth paragraph down, it says AD, it should be AG. I apologize for that. The next one is regarding purchasing, which is 6320. In essence, this is talking to make sure all of our procurement of supplies, materials, equipments, and services fall within the federal and state statutes and board policies. When we seek informal price quotes, in the past, it's been 0 to 10,000. As the state's bid threshold rises, they're recommending that it'd be at least 50% of that, whatever the state statute is. Vicki, do you by any chance know off the top of your head what that number is? Is it 21,000 or 23? 26, so it would be 13,000, would be the 50% that we were required to get informal quotes and purchase. Anything over that amount, we're required to get at least 3 competitive prices. But then it allows it to fluctuate as that number moves up for the state. At the very top of that one, it talks about conflict of interest, and it referenced that those policies were previously approved by the board. Remember, the 1130 is for administration, 3110 is for professional certified staff, and the 4110 is support staff. There is also in this policy, when we talk about purchaser, there was not a process for bidders to protest if they felt something was not done properly. What this policy does is within 72 hours of the bid opening, if someone doesn't believe that we now would have a procedure that allows them to submit in writing to me, so to review the process. And if they fail to write, that they can't come back to us at a later point. There's a window that they have to appeal.
Okay.
What happens at that point after they submit in writing to you? Do you make that decision?
The notice of the filing of the bid protest shall be communicated to the board and shall be noted on any subsequent recommendation. So for instance, if I was recommending to you laptops, and there was a vendor out there who felt that we shouldn't be going with them, I'd have to note that there was an objection to the bid, so the board has consideration of that. Because you don't always have to go with the lowest bid when that comes in. So if you're going to go with someone that's higher, there might be reasons and justification for it, but someone who was the lowest bid may object to it. What it really does from our angle is it creates that safeguard. There's a time limit. And if you don't follow the time limit, you can't come to us a year after the purchases are made or months after.
But does it allow us to put something back out to bid?
So in
Do
other
we
words,
have that option if somebody submits something?
that I don't, well, if there's a question on the process, because when the bids come to you as a board, and if I'm going to recommend someone maybe as a higher bid in this case, I'm going to assume the question is, why are we going to pay more for something that's coming in cheaper? And so I'd have to give you the information to look at. We always, in our bid specs, can always decline bids, reject offers. You want to?
You can reject all, it's always in all of our RFPs too. The board has the right to reject all bids.
And start over.
And start over.
So there's some, I'm going to call it boilerplate language in that. Thank you, Vicki.
So before you come to us with your recommendation, you've already told say the 3 companies who you're going with?
Oftentimes, when we do a bid and there's a date and time that we publish that we're going to open bids on that day, oftentimes there's a representative from the companies there that are tallying them, and then Vicki's office has posted online, here are the results, or sends it out to the people who bid, here are the results of the bid, because it has to be as open and transparent as possible.
But Jeff's question was, but you don't say to company A, you were the lowest bidder. It's just put out there, notice, this is where the bids ended up. But we don't say the recommendation, we will be going with A and you're C. Right? Isn't that what you were asking?
Yes. So how would they object to
The bid.
the bid?
They may feel a company's product or a company's service might be, in their eyes, inferior to what they could offer, and they're objecting because you're approving, you may be paying more for a product that they feel is inferior to what they're having offered, and they were a lesser bid.
Right, but the question is, before you come to us with the recommendation, out of those 3 companies, the 2 companies know they're not getting the job?
Yeah, well, we contact them
Before
say that what's phrased as with the tech is, the laptops would probably be the first one that comes to my mind, is we notify them, well, they all were there when the bid was open, so they know who the lowest one is. And then when we start looking and analyzing the bid, at some point, we're letting them know that this is the one that I'm recommending to the board, and now everything's contingent on board approval. So they do know at some point.
But they can't protest it until after we've awarded the bid. Right? That's what that's.
Correct. Well, it's
So that's when they have the 72 hours.
If a bidder wishes to file a bid protest, they must follow the procedures.
Right, but there's nothing to protest until we approve it.
They could protest the process.
They could,
Okay.
this hasn't happened here
Right.
that I know of.
Typically is protested in some ways too, is process.
How it got to that point.
Correct.
How it got to that point.
I bring it up because of the bond and the whole,
Interesting.
with the track thing there, what happened with the 2 bidders that we had. No, had the one been able to protest, I'm just curious if that would have been something that would have been able to change that.
Uh-huh.
And it
Well,
possibly is.
I would think potentially it could be, sure.
I'm still bitter about it because I feel we paid for it twice, so.
Well, and the confusion about that was language within
Right.
RFP.
what was being
Right.
asked for in the RFP, right?
Exactly.
So I would think that if that would be part of the process that would be wrong, that the bidder would be able to protest if there was confusion about what the bid was
And
supposed to have in it.
in the bids, we
right?
always put in there, if you've got questions, it refers to Vicki's office, and then we often put an addendum. So if we need clarification language on the bid, during that window that it's out for bid. Really, and other than the first part regarding the change in the threshold in terms of when we have to get informal quotes versus competitive prices, This just creates a timeline for us that, once that timeline's been met and there's been no protest, it kind of closes the book, or that chapter, and we can move on then from that angle. This wasn't in previous policies.
This may be what we've already just talked about, forgive me if it is, but, so what that means is, what you were talking about, is that once anybody who's put a bid in knows who's been granted, right, who we're gonna purchase something from, they no longer have the opportunity to protest. It's finished. Because this is
that's how this
72
reads.
hours after the opening
Right.
of the bids,
Correct.
not the granting of.
So
Well,
there's no way
protest.
to protest.
Well, I'm
that.
going to say
Right.
there's two ways, really. That's the formal way that we close it, but they always have an option. When it comes to an action item on the board, they could come and speak at public comment. They still may disagree, and you may hear them during that point perspective, too. But in terms of anything from a legal perspective, where they are saying, we did something wrong, we didn't follow a process, that gives us our time frame to have to look into it during that period.
So with this policy, then you wouldn't bring us a recommendation if it was within 72 hours of the opening of the bid, because you're not allowing the proper amount of time for objections.
Correct.
Okay.
Should that read 5 business days, calendar days? For the receipt of the protest.
What I can do is I would defer to our attorney on that one, just to give him a call and ask him.
Because it makes a difference, yeah.
And then I can update that either through the newsletter or at the next time when it comes back for a second reading. Okay. 80, any more questions on that one? Policy 8400, this policy was actually just approved in August. The only change really is there were several measures where we do not allow weapons that were previously passed for the policy for administration, certified staff, pupils, support staff. That takes that language, which is policies 3217, 4217, and 5772, and puts it now into this safety, school safety, that we prohibit weapons on school property and at school-sponsored events. And the very limited cases were identified in those previous policies. It might have been a law enforcement officer having the weapon, might have been a weapon that's used as a prop in a play, as long as it's just not a real weapon, and so forth. Changes the Michigan to federal law for the school safety zone. And on page 3, that is a duplication paragraph, so I just noticed it when I was reviewing it before the board meeting, so I will remove that one. It's on the page, it was already previously approved. And otherwise, everything else remains the same language that was previously approved. Questions on that one? Okay. Next policy, 8500, food service. It removes by a licensed physician if we needed to substitute for a student that needs a change in their lunch menu from our food service program because of their specific needs, and it opens it up to any healthcare provider that has the authority to prescribe, to issue prescriptives or prescriptive authorities in the state of Michigan. Where before it was a licensed physician, it broadens it because there are others that can write prescriptions. And then if we have that document, then we can adjust the meal programs. Oftentimes when we do that, the meals do not meet the dietary needs that are required for the lunch programs. Page 2 of that talks about, these are other policies that we, purchasing of the food and supplies, just updates with the state laws and USDA regulation. And it references, instead of using dietary guidelines for Americans, it uses the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program, the nutritional standards for that program. and then reinforces these concepts to be within the school. We taught in the classroom about healthy eating, which is part of our wellness plan, et cetera. And it just references the documentation or the legal documents that why those changes need to be made. Now, policy 9211 talks about district support organization. In the previous policy that was approved, there's an adjustment to waivering fundraisers that do not necessarily meet the nutritional standards. You can have one per week. And this just allows, it takes that language that was already an approved board policy and puts it into our district-supported organizations. It also references that those organizations that are district-supported, and when we talk about district-supported, it could be, we offer our facilities, the student activities funds run through them, that they can't discriminate on who is the membership and who's part of that.
Under letter H, you might want to strike that, the board permits. It's just there twice.
Thank you. And so letter H is that one fundraiser per year that regarding the sale of food, that, or one per week, excuse me. It strikes out the language that allowed, you could only do it 30 minutes after school to midnight the night before. It addresses, it updates the language to the new state law and federal laws. That's it for that one. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Yep, go ahead.
So the language in here talks about the outside support organizations purchasing liability insurance. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, if they're, as an organization, a 501c3 organization, they should have a insurance to hold them.
Do all supporting organizations know that that's a part of our requirement?
Currently, it is, I don't know if they do have insurance. I'd have to look and look at each one of those supporting groups. But it would be something that if it was approved, that I'd have to be communicating with them that they are, they need to have that. If something were to happen while they're, and I'll just use, if the athletic boosters were putting on a fundraiser here at the school, it's solely their activity. There should be liability insurance that's covering them. Though we have it with our insurance just because of the property that we're letting them use. If they're using, even if they're off-site, if they're doing a fundraiser at local restaurant, and someone gets hurt there, and they're found to be at fault, there should be insurance there.
Could we in any way provide them with, I don't even know if it's possible, but would there be a greater discount if they group together under us as
I can look
an
into that,
approved?
because that, I can look into that. I'll check with our attorney.
As an approved support organization, instead of them trying to gain their own?
Yep, I will get to that information. We have if they're an organization which our kids and we're promoting, we have a fiscal responsibility to make sure that they're following, guidelines and so forth. So I will look into it. I will.
Okay, anything else? Thank you. Next is our public comments. It's the portion of our meeting where if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the board, they can. You can go up to the podium. We just ask that you give us your name, and you have 3 minutes to speak. It is not a question or answer period, but if there is a question you would like answered, there's a card up there that you can leave your name and phone number, and someone will get back with you. Is there anyone who would like to address the board this evening?
All right. Brett Brinsfield. Okay, first off, I'm just here because I have nothing better to do, and just listening to the technology part mainly is really piqued my interest. Part of your problem might be, in fact, with the difference in generations. I mean, if you think about it, because you get the younger kids who are actually growing up with all this technology change, and then the older kids kind of grew up with like more of the old fashioned, like just textbooks, reading, writing, cursive. So some of them aren't probably used to it. A lot of people aren't. There's a huge difference too. Like some kids are okay with technology, while other ones struggle with it because they're more traditional. I mean, that's how I was. I'd rather do traditional rather than use technology at any point. And maybe if you would have just started with the younger generations and get them involved with the technology, you wouldn't have as many problems because you could just teach those teachers and then reach your way to the high school. Well, on the other hand, you get these other students who, yeah, they're going into a world where technology is used all the time, but at the same time, because it's just a difference in generations, it's not as fast of a progress. It's kind of more moderate, especially with especially your 90s kids. We were more, the technology wasn't as advanced at the time, and it's just really starting to pick up now. So there's a lot of struggle with that as well. I mean, not everyone can keep up with it, so you got to put that into consideration with your technology advancements as well. And I mean, not everyone likes it either. I mean, it's just one of those things where you got to kind of pick and choose where you want to advance it and where you want to kind of keep it cut back. So.
Is there anyone else? Okay, next, I would be looking for a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of contract negotiations.
So moved.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call. Chris? Sarah? Tracy? Jeff? Dan? And I vote aye. We will go into closed session, and we'll be able to use the conference room here. And we will not be coming back and making any kind of decision out of the closed session.